Hello everyone, this is the story of What If Naru Fell Helplessly for the Seduction of Tsunade. Prologue. Naruto, said the Hokage, crossing her arms over her ample bosom, why exactly did you feel the need to tag the outer wall of the village with one of those, for a good time call so-and-so, messages? Aren't you a little old for those kinds of pranks? Naruto looked at the floor and scuffed it with his foot. Truthfully, he didn't know why he'd felt the need to revert to his old ways. It was just that. Ever since he'd become a jonin, ever since the people around him finally warmed up to him somewhat, he'd felt. He didn't know. Like one of the crowd. No one looked twice at him anymore, not even in disgusted fascination. No one was paying attention. I don't know, he said, then looked up at Tsunade's irate face. She took a deep breath. Naruto prepared to bolt if he had to. I can accept that, she said. Naruto relaxed. But, she continued, cracking her knuckles. Naruto edged towards the window. Why the hell did you put my number up, you little brat? Naruto made for the window, but Tsunade caught him before he reached his goal and swung him up to her eye level by his collar. Do you, she ground out, punctuating each word by shaking Naruto so hard his eyes rattled in their sockets, have any idea how many perverted calls I've gotten in the last hour alone? Asterisk. Naruto closed his eyes, instinctively forming seals with his hands. He realized at the last second that the jutsu he was performing wouldn't be any help against Tsunade. She was a woman, after all, but he figured he was going to be putting in a second anyway, so it didn't really matter. With that in mind, he took a deep breath and yelled out his secret special attack, Beepy no Jutsu. He remained suspended in the air for a second, then Tsunade let go. He fell to the floor and cowered there. After a moment, he looked up, confused. Tsunade was staring at him, eyes glazed over and blood trickling from her nose. As Naruto watched, she slowly slid to the floor. He raised himself to his knees and poked her forehead. She fell backwards, completely unconscious. Naruto stared for a moment. Then he grinned and stood up, proudly naked and female, and placed a foot on Tsunade's abdomen in triumph. Ha ha! He shouted. Uzumaki Naruto triumphs again. His super secret special attack, Beepy no Jutsu, has now taken down not one Hokage, but two, and the next Hokage will be Naruto himself. A sudden surge of chakra made Naruto fall to his knees, clutching at his stomach. The painful sensation soon subsided, however, and he stood, disregarding it in his victory. Chuckling as he caught sight of Tsunade's motionless form once again, he put his fingers together in the seal for Kai, the jutsu release. Kai, he said. Then he said it again, puzzled. Nothing happened. He tried one last time. Still, nothing. He raised a hand to his chest, dreading what he might find. His beeps were no longer an illusion. They were real. He slid his hand down to his crotch. Flat. Uzumaki Naruto, who had taken down two Hokages in this form, screamed as he found himself trapped in it. Not on my panties. Well, said Kakashi, I told you before. You stay in that form too long, you'll get stuck in it. This isn't funny, Kakashi-sensei, Naruto fumed. I beg to differ, Sasuke said, looking bored. Naruto, Sakura and Sasuke were seated on the ground in the field where they'd first proven their worth as genin, while Kakashi perched on one of the posts. They'd been called there by Naruto earlier that morning and found him in a form not unlike his Beepy no Jutsu, but clothed. Sakura had been incredulous as he'd explained what had happened. A henge no jutsu transformation, becoming an actual transformation? Sakura had never heard of such a thing. Logically, it would be impossible, but very little was impossible when Naruto was your teammate. It was a beautiful day, clear skies and warm sun, but Sakura could feel a storm brewing nearby. Her instincts were soon proven right. After a few minutes of frowning at his rival, Naruto flicked a shuriken at Sasuke, which Sasuke caught and nonchalantly tossed back. Before it could reach its target, Sakura, seated in between her two male teammates, snatched it out of the air and glared at both of them. They didn't seem to notice, though, too busy glaring at each other. Sakura sighed. It was always like this. Kakashi glanced up from his reading, sensing the charged atmosphere. Naruto, said Sakura, trying to diffuse the tension, what exactly happened? Did you do anything differently than when you usually, do that? No, Naruto sulked. It's just like I told you. I used it on that old hag Tsunade. Don't call our Hokage a hag, Naruto, Sakura admonished, but as usual he ignored her. And then there was this big surge of chakra, and then well, you know. I got stuck like this. I don't know what happened. Sasuke snorted. Naruto whipped his head back towards him, long ponytails catching the light and momentarily blinding Sakura. What was that for? She snarled. Because only you could, accidentally, overpower a henge no jutsu like this, that's why, Sasuke drawled. Sakura narrowed her eyes at him. She still had a bit of a crush on him, true, but he occasionally got on her nerves. Not as much as Naruto, but enough. You're such a moron, he continued. Naruto leapt to his feet. Don't call me that. Sasuke stood slowly, smirking. Why not? It's the truth. Sasuke fell into a lazy fighting stance as Naruto rushed forward. Sakura stood herself and was about to intervene when Kakashi stepped in between them, holding Naruto back with both hands on his shoulders. Now, he said, no reason to fight just yet. Naruto, I'll talk to the Hokage and see if I can figure out what might have gone wrong. In the meantime. Interrupted Naruto, you might not want to do that yet. I don't think she's recovered. He scuffed the ground, looking as repentant as she ever did. Kakashi stared at her for a moment. It worked? He asked. Naruto nodded. On the Hokage? Naruto nodded again. Kakashi gazed at the sky, looking contemplative. He murmured. Then he shook himself and continued. In the meantime, Sakura, could you get him into something a little more fitting? With that, he disappeared in a puff of smoke. Sakura looked Naruto up and down. She saw Kakashi's point. While Naruto's regular orange jumpsuit covered the most important parts, it was so loose that it left a great deal of skin exposed, especially when he moved. Naruto was still small for his age, though he had gained a couple of centimeters, and the BP no Jutsu was almost as tall as Sasuke, almost 4 centimeters taller. In the meantime, his sandals, made for a growing boy, were loose on his new, more slender feet. Sakura winced at the thought of the blisters the friction would cause. And, she thought, eyeing Naruto's chest, he would need a bra. Hopefully one of her spares would fit. Damn it! Raged inner Sakura. He's not even a real woman, and he still has nicer beeps than me. So, said Sasuke, in that particular tone of voice he'd developed over the years specifically to provoke Naruto. Why did you use that move on the Hokage anyway? I thought you were 16, not 12. Sakura rolled her eyes. Sasuke was being really irritating today. Instead of yelling and starting another fight, as Sakura had expected him to do, Naruto glanced away, looking almost guilty. No way. But I kinda played a prank on her, Naruto said. Sakura's jaw dropped. Back when he'd done this sort of thing routinely, he'd always bragged about what he'd done, how bad he was, how no one else in the village could get away with it. Sure, that time was long gone, but still, Sakura had the feeling it wasn't just age that had taken away much of his usual bravado. Perhaps he was more shaken by this than she'd thought. Inner Sakura snorted. Yeah, right, she said. He's probably just hoping you'll forgive him for whatever he's done this time. Like hell. And what prank was that, Naruto? She said aloud, pushing herself out of her own thoughts and into her usual role as peacekeeper and rule enforcer. Well, he replied slowly, if you look at the outside wall, you'll see it. The conversation died, and Sakura silently contemplated the scene in front of her. Naruto was sulking, arms crossed over his unfettered beeps and a pout on his downturned face. Sasuke was gazing at Naruto, eyes traveling up and down his body in a manner Sakura decided she didn't like at all. Before she could say or do anything to stop it, though, Sasuke broke the silence himself. Hey, what's wrong, Naruto? Said Sasuke, smirking. Woman problems? Shut up, Sasuke, Naruto mumbled. I'm just feeling sick, that's all. The silence returned. Sasuke continued to look at Naruto, who refused to look at anything besides the ground. Sakura chewed her bottom lip and thought. If Naruto was back to pulling pranks again, then maybe. Maybe, growled inner Sakura, he's pulling one on us. Quick as lightning, Sakura crossed the distance between herself and Naruto, took a beep in her hand, and squeezed. She murmured. There was a definite bulge under the fabric, ruling out the low-level henge no jutsu. She squeezed a little harder. The bulge remained instead of disappearing. indicating that it wasn't one of the more advanced illusions which added a small amount of substance to the fabrication. So, it seemed Naruto was telling the truth. She looked up to apologize to Naruto for doubting him, but froze as her gaze fell on his face. "He," muttered inner Sakura, taken by surprise for once. "What does that look?" Naruto's cheeks were flushed, eyes half closed. As she watched, his mouth curved into a lascivious grin. She stared for a moment, then flushed too as she realized what was going on. "Naruto," she growled, drawing her hand back and clenching it into a fist. What's up, Sakura-chan?" Naruto asked, clueless. "You pervert!" Sakura yelled, slamming her fist into the side of his face. He flew a short distance and crashed into the pole Kakashi had been sitting on with a decidedly satisfying crunch. She smiled as he slid to the ground, cracking her knuckles. After a moment, he shook himself and stood up. "What was that for, Sakura-chan?" he whined, rubbing his sore head. "It's 'cause you're a total pervert, moron," Sasuke interrupted, already on his way out of the field and into the nearby forest. Sakura caught Naruto's wrist before he could flip Sasuke off and, giving Sasuke's retreating back one last glance, dragged him out of the field in the opposite direction. Hey, Sakura-chan," Naruto asked, his newly soprano voice breathy from being pulled along at such a pace. "Where are we going?" "To my house," Sakura answered. "You need some clothes and sandals that fit. Some of my old things should do for now. And then," she said, giving him a sideways glance, "then we're going to the store." "But Sakura-chan, I thought you were gonna give me what I needed," Naruto said. "I hate shopping. Why do we have to go?" "Because," she said, gripping his wrist harder and dragging him even faster, "there's no way a pervert like you is getting his hands on a pair of my panties." "Hell no," inner Sakura agreed. A tribute to John Steinbeck. While Sakura was giving Naruto his makeover, Sasuke was out in the woods, venting some steam. "Damn him," he muttered to himself as he beat the sap out of an innocent tree. "Damn him and his stupid party tricks." He paused for a moment and glared at the tree. Then he redoubled his efforts. "Damn his hyperness," he continued to mutter, punctuating each syllable with a chakra-powered punch or kick, "and his loud mouth, and his stupid grin, and his hair, and his whiskers." As he mutilated the defenseless sapling, images flashed through his mind. Fighting against Naruto, alongside him, watching him fight Sakura, the few times they'd had to bathe together, his smile when he was genuinely happy. And now, Naruto's arms crossed over his chest, accentuating his new cleavage. His orange shirt hugging his new, socially acceptable curves. The few inches of smooth belly the shirt had ridden up to reveal. Naruto's face as Sakura had essentially groped him. He imagined Naruto hopping along on top of the village rooftops to his house for a change of clothes, completely naked. Sasuke's flurried attacks slowed, then stopped. He stared at the tree, noting that he had stripped a large section of the trunk of bark, leaving it bare. Bare like his heart now was. He leaned his forehead against the smooth wood, punching at it without energy. The action brought his weariness to his attention. Weariness of the body, weariness of the soul. He was so tired of it. Tired of it all. Tired of revenge. Tired of being cold and distant. Tired of hiding how much he truly liked his fellow Chunin, some more than others. He slid to the ground, exhausted and sore. And then, it rained. UNF. "Naruto," Sakura admonished, "you're going to make yourself sick again if you eat that." Sakura was again seated between Naruto and Sasuke. This time, however, they were sitting at a table in one of Konoha Village's few indoor restaurants with the other Chunin in their graduating class. Their teachers had insisted they eat lunch together today. Kakashi had eyed Sasuke as he'd explained that it was meant to form a stronger bond between them. He'd called it a training exercise. Sakura called it fun. The table, though near a wall in the back of the restaurant, was nevertheless well lit and airy, a function of the enormous windows which took up nearly one whole wall. In addition, inner Sakura was asleep, leaving her feeling light and happy, and she was surrounded by people she genuinely liked, a luxury she'd had to do without on countless missions. Her one regret was that, with Naruto to her left and Sasuke to her right, she couldn't properly gossip with Ino and Hinata too, maybe, but she was still so shy. Ino was slowly forcing her out of her shell, though, laughing and joking with her as they sat next to each other on the opposite side of the table. Sakura smiled as Hinata giggled. You couldn't be shy with Ino. She knew that better than anyone. Yeah, came Choji's voice from Naruto's left, breaking Sakura out of her thoughts. Even I couldn't handle fried chicken, spinach and banana ramen. And should you really have gotten a double serving? Ino said, momentarily pausing in her conversation with Hinata. I mean, you're starting to get a bit of a belly there, Naruto. Chew uf, Naruto said, mouth full of noodles. He chewed, swallowed, and continued. I'm really, really hungry. When are you not? Sasuke said to himself, so quietly that only Sakura and perhaps Shino could hear him. She risked a glance. Sasuke had been acting weird ever since that day in the field, fighting and arguing with Naruto on an even more frequent basis. Every little thing Naruto did seemed to piss Sasuke off. She'd hoped they wouldn't pick on each other at all during lunch, but if they only did so under their breath, that was all she could really ask for. Beside him, Shino was silent and unreadable, an island of uneasy peace in the sea of noise. And this is what I feel like eating, okay? Naruto paused, then pushed his chair back and looked down. Am I really getting fat, though? Yup, Shikamaru drawled. He looked down at the small furry thing he was currently defending his food from, then raised his eyebrows at Kiba. Hey, get your dog off the table, would you? Some of us don't eat at the speed of light. Kiba slurped up the last of his udon and whistled. The puppy Kuromaru, one of Akamaru's youngest, perked her ears, then trotted daintily across the table and into her owner's arms. He stuffed her into the front of his jacket, as he had with Akamaru when he'd been a puppy. Sakura sighed in relief when he did so. Maybe his family didn't mind dog hair in their food, but she most certainly did. Naruto, in the meantime, had his hands on his hips, frowning. This is so weird, he said. First I can't keep anything down for weeks, and now. He shook his head and went back to his ramen. It doesn't show that much, Naruto-kun, Hinata said quietly, but Sakura doubted Naruto heard her over the sound of his own chewing. So, Naruto, said Kiba once he'd finished cuddling with Kuromaru, how long have you been a girl for now? 2 months? He grinned, and Sakura rolled her eyes. She did not need stupid boys baiting each other during meals. Should we start calling you, Naruko, now? Naruto froze, then shot up out of his chair and pointed at Kiba. You do, he shouted, and I'll kick your ass so hard you'll have to walk on your hands for a year. I am the man who will become Hokage, you hear me? The man. Sakura heard Sasuke draw in a breath to speak and gripped his forearm firmly. Sasuke, don't, she hissed, then turned her attention back to Naruto when she felt him relax. Naruto had his foot up on the table, oblivious to the disapproving glances of the restaurant's other patrons. His long hair dipped into his ramen, but he didn't notice, so absorbed was he in his anger. See, he said, gesturing to his leg, I'm wearing pants. His chair, which had teetered on its back legs during Naruto's speech, finally toppled over. Naruto paid it no heed. This is not my fault, so you'd better just shut up about me being a girl. I think you should be the one to shut up, idiot, Sasuke interrupted, standing slowly. Naruto glared at Sasuke, transferring his rage over to him. Sakura buried her face in her hands and mentally sent out thousands of apology notes to everyone in the restaurant. What the hell is with you, Sasuke? He yelled. Every time I turn around, you're doing something to piss me off. Must be PMS, Sasuke retorted. Sakura glanced at his face and felt inner Sakura start to stir. He was enjoying this. It is not. I haven't even had one of those things. If anyone has PMS, it's you. Sasuke's eyes flashed. Sakura cringed. That look meant the argument was about to come to blows. Come on, Sasuke, let's settle this right now, Naruto continued. I'll show you how much of a man I am. Not in here, moron, Sasuke said, grabbing Naruto's wrist and dragging him out of the restaurant at lightning speed. For exactly 6 seconds, there was dead silence in the restaurant. Then, as if a faucet had been turned on, conversation started again, mostly hushed whispers and glances directed at their table. Sakura raised her eyes and found Ino gazing at her with something like pity. I am so sorry, Ino said. Sakura nodded. I can't believe them sometimes. I mean, seriously. And you, Sakura said, rounding on Kiba, why'd you do that? You know how Naruto is. It was supposed to be a joke, Kiba explained. I didn't think he'd take it seriously. The table was silent for a moment. Well, said Ino, attempting to recapture the jovial mood from before the fight, I guess I beat you in that area, Sakura. Macho is not a problem we have here on Team 10. Right, guys? Right, Shikamaru and Choji agreed. See? Got them well trained, Ino continued, pleased with herself. Her two teammates looked at each other and rolled their eyes. Sakura smiled, glad she'd managed, not to salvage her old friendship with Ino, but to form a new and better one. Got any tips? She asked. God knows those two. She gestured to the wall they were seated next to, on the other side of which was an alley where she assumed Naruto and Sasuke would have their little spat, could use some discipline. Ino looked thoughtful for a moment. Well, if you want, I could tell you, but with boys as badly behaved as those two, you might want to start with the less advanced stuff, she said, indicating Kiba, who was cooing to Kuromaru to calm her down. I can use all the help I can get, Sakura admitted. Okay. Then, Ino said brightly. Shikamaru, switch places with Sakura, would you? We have some girl talk to do. And Hinata, don't think you're getting away from this. Every girl should know how to train men. It's a basic skill. Sakura and Shikamaru stood and switched places. This is such a pain, Shikamaru said as he righted Naruto's former chair and sat down. Hey, you think Naruto's gonna eat all that? Choji asked, indicating Naruto's half-full bowl of ramen. Shikamaru eyed it warily. If you want to try it, be my guest, he said, pushing the bowl towards Choji. One wouldn't. Hey, pass me my fried rice, okay? As the requisite transfer of food was made, Sakura set her salad down and took a seat. She leaned in towards Ino. So? She said in a conspiratorial voice. Okay, Ino said, leaning in towards Sakura and drawing Hinata down with her. Lesson 1. You're the boss. Most guys will roll over and play dead if you make it clear you're in charge. She looked up and noticed that the males at the table were silently listening in. Observe, she said in her quiet voice, then raised it and addressed the table. Hey, you, she said, stop eavesdropping. Talk about guy stuff. Shikamaru raised an eyebrow incredulously. Guy stuff? Yeah, Ino replied, like sports or special jutsus or something. Shut up, Kiba growled, his ear to the wall. Excuse me? Ino asked, insulted. No, I mean, I heard something. Listen. The entire table leaned toward the wall and listened. From the other side came a thump, and then another. Soon the thumps were coming in rhythm, and voices began to float through as well. Sakura's eyes widened as she heard the words. Naruto. Come on, Sasuke, can't you do it any harder than that? I'll show you hard. There was a particularly loud thump followed by a short wail from Naruto. Shikamaru raised his hand to signal their waiter, who was with another table on the other side of the restaurant. How do you like that, huh, UNF? Sasuke gave a short yelp, and the thumping stopped. All was silent for a moment. Hey. Thought you'd never get me off, idiot. Sakura shook herself out of her thoughts. So Naruto and Sasuke were. And they were. In public. She and Ino looked at each other, eyes wide. Did you know about this? Ino asked. Sakura shook her head. No, not at all. I mean, they always seemed to be a little too obsessed with each other, but I never thought. Well, it's a good thing I moved on, I guess, said Ino, waving in Shikamaru's general direction. Abruptly, Hinata stood up, tears in her eyes. She stared at the wall for a moment, then fled the restaurant at top speed. Oh, no, Sakura said. She doesn't still have a crush on Naruto, does she? Those assholes, Kiba snarled, standing. Abruptly, he stopped, wincing as if kicked. What? He asked, casting a curious glance at Shino. Shino looked at Kiba, who beeped his head to the side. He raised an eyebrow. Kiba made a confused noise in the back of his throat. Shino gestured towards the door of the restaurant and muttered, Hinata. Kiba looked at him for a second longer, then punched his palm as he understood. Great idea, he said happily, already on his way out. Thanks, man. He exited the restaurant and dropped Kuromaru to the ground, whispering instructions. She sniffed the air for a moment, then took off down the street, Kiba on her heels. Once Kiba was out of sight, Sakura was able to breathe and think again. Whatever happened to bonding? Well, She imagined Sasuke and Naruto had bonded quite well, and hopefully Kiba and Hinata would soon as well. She smiled and gave Shino a thumbs up. Surprisingly, he returned it. Must be in a good mood, Sakura murmured to herself. Hey Shikamaru, Ino said playfully, how come you never run after me when I'm in a bad mood? Shikamaru sighed. You can take care of yourself, he said, and he continued in a quieter tone that Sakura assumed was meant for Choji's ears alone. The way I help you feel better is by being your punching bag. I heard that, cried Ino, flinging a piece of orange chicken at him. It hit him square on the chin, slid down, and fell onto his plate. He raised an eyebrow at her, then calmly flung it right back. Hey, don't waste good food, you guys, Choji said, attempting to snatch the morsel out of the air. Can I help you? Came a voice from behind Sakura. She turned around. It was the waiter, looking as bedraggled as she felt. Sakura felt a stray pea lodge in her hair and grimaced. Check please. Dude gestates like a lady. You really should have come in earlier, Tsunade grumbled as Naruto plopped himself down on her desk. But Tsunade Baba, you know I never have time, Naruto grinned. All these missions you send me on, and I'm still a growing boy who needs his sleep. Remember when you call me Tsunade Baba, that I can still wipe the floor with you, Tsunade said. Really, some things never change. And unlike some people, I have no compunctions about hitting women. Not that you would, Tsunade Baba, Naruto retorted, you're a woman too. Off with your shirt, Tsunade said, exasperated. She still had a mountain of paperwork to do, and Naruto really should have come in weeks ago for a follow-up examination. She'd done a physical the day after his strange transformation, but hadn't been able to determine the cause. Hopefully she'd get better results this time. Ooh, are you sure you can handle me shirtless, Tsunade Ba? Tsunade made as if to flick him on the forehead. Naruto smiled nervously and rubbed the back of his head before continuing. I meant, Tsunade babe. Yeah, that was it. She eyed him critically, struggling to keep her mirth from showing. If there was one thing Naruto was good for, it was comic relief. That's a bit better, but watch it, Buster. Naruto nodded vigorously and shucked his shirt. Tsunade took his pulse, then put her ear to his chest to listen to his heart and lungs. All normal. She noticed as she sat back up that his face was flushed. She scowled. They should never have let Jiraiya train him. She gripped his upper arm and placed her fingers on the artery. Blood pressure seemed to be normal. No fever, despite the flush that lingered. Physical possibilities exhausted, she closed her eyes and reached out with her chakra. The flow of chakra through his body appeared behind her eyelids. Using it as a guide, she reached out and placed her fingers on a few of the particularly active pulse points for his chakra, on his temple and below his right collarbone. The instant she made contact, her eyes popped open. Something was amiss. Naruto had always had a naturally high chakra level, especially in the abdominal area, where the demon fox was sealed. The two chakras had been steadily mixing through the years, but Naruto's own chakra had remained dominant, through sheer force of will on his part, Tsunade suspected. Now, however, they appeared to be separating as if the demon fox was reforming within Naruto's body. For a moment, she panicked. Had the fourth seal not worked completely? Would they have a repeat of the tragedy of 16 years ago? She shook her head, taking her hands off of Naruto's skin. If the seal hadn't worked, she'd just redo it. She had the power, after all. The only problem was, what would it do to Naruto, physically and psychologically, to have such a powerful jutsu used on him at this stage in life? The fourth had used a baby because infants' chakra systems weren't fully formed yet, and thus easy to manipulate. Naruto's chakra system, on the other hand, was extremely well formed, both from conscious strengthening and from the added strain of the demon fox's chakra flowing through it. To reseal the demon fox at this point could be disastrous for the boy. Tsunade Baba? Naruto asked, sounding worried, what's going on? She put it out of her mind for the moment. She'd have to consult with the jonin on this, and Naruto himself, of course, but she wanted to mull over it first. Nothing, Naruto. Put your shirt back on, she said. But I do have a few questions to ask you. First, have you been having any trouble breathing lately? Nope, Naruto said, and took a deep breath to demonstrate. That's good. Peeing? Naruto blushed. It still feels kinda weird, he admitted. That's to be expected. Eating? Well, I was throwing up a lot, but I'm better now. Tsunade paused. Throwing up? When was this? Oh, up until about a week ago. Just in the mornings, though. Weird, huh? Only in the mornings? Yup, Naruto said. And then afterwards I was always really hungry. Hey, Tsunade-sama, wanna treat me to ramen after this? Tsunade steepled her hands and regarded him carefully. Yes, now that she was thinking about it, there was a definite bulge in Naruto's belly, too large to be caused by mere weight gain. And though the level of chakra in Naruto's abdomen was always higher than the surrounding areas, it was higher now than she'd ever seen it before. She'd passed it off as a side effect of the transformation, but now, if her suspicion was true, the situation had just become infinitely more complex. Naruto, she said seriously, have you had beep since you transformed? Naruto turned bright red. WHWH what? Have you had beep, Naruto? She pressured. Specifically, have you had beep with a man? No. No way. Are you absolutely sure, Naruto? Yes. Have you ever lost consciousness in a strange place? Passed out from drinking too much? What are you talking about, Tsunade Baba? Naruto cried. Of course I haven't. Why are you asking me all these weird questions? Hey, I bet you're a pervert too. Just like that pervert Sennin. His chakra flared righteously. You wouldn't believe the things he wanted me to do, but I swear I never did any of them. Tsunade crossed her arms and looked away for a second. All right, Naruto, she interrupted, I'll ask you one last question. When was the last time you had your period? Huh? Naruto said, scratching his head, I never did. Tsunade took a deep breath, let it out, and looked Naruto straight in the eye. To answer your earlier question, Naruto, she said, the reason I'm asking you about your beep life is because I think. You think you might have figured out what's wrong with me? Naruto said happily. No, Naruto, she said. I think you may be pregnant. But Izao. Hitaki Kakashi was pissed. Well, perhaps not pissed. It was his duty as a jonin to come whenever the Hokage called, after all. Even if she called right as he was slipping into a nice warm bubble bath, the latest volume of Cum Cum piracy in his hands. No, he was perfectly happy to answer the door in only a towel and mask and trek halfway across town just so he could wait at the Hokage's leisure. Perfectly happy. So he was becoming a crotchety old man. He figured that after dealing with Naruto, Sasuke and Sakura for 4 years, and especially this latest fiasco, he deserved it. He wished he'd remembered to bring his book, or that the tiny waiting room had some magazines to read, or something. He dug around in his pouch, hoping he'd brought a crossword puzzle or something. He found something infinitely better. Cum Cum Paradise, Volume 4. Definitely his favorite of the series. He grinned beneath the mask and opened it to the first page. Of course, that was the moment Katetsu chose to stick his head out of the Hokage's office. Hitaki Kakashi, he said, cowering a little when Kakashi slammed the book shut and glared at him. The Hokage will see you now. Kakashi stood and walked through the door. He briefly thought about showing Katetsu 1,000 years of pain, but decided it was punishment enough that the man was Tsunade's errand boy. Katetsu closed the door behind him, and Kakashi stood at attention in front of the Hokage. At ease, she said, seated behind her desk. Kakashi relaxed and took a seat in a nice cushy chair right in front of her. Not that he'd been offered it, but he figured he deserved it for being punctual for once. You're probably wondering why I called you here on such short notice, she started, rubbing her temples. I am, Kakashi answered. You said it was an emergency. What's going on? It concerns one of your students. Kakashi gripped the chair. As annoying as they could be, he really did like and care for his students. What could have happened? Could Sakura have fallen ill? Could Naruto have messed up another jutsu, this time with deadly results? Could Sasuke have left the village again? He desperately hoped it was anything but that last one. Sasuke had been forgiven the last time he'd gone missing, as he was young and in pain. Now, however, no mercy would be shown, especially in light of his previous transgressions. Which one? He asked, somehow managing to sound nonchalant. The Hokage took a deep breath. It's Naruto, she said. What about him? There seemed to have been a few effects from his transformation that we didn't consider before. Effects? He seems to be pregnant. Kakashi stared at her for a moment, then burst out laughing. Tsunade watched as he slowly got a hold of himself, absolutely stone-faced. "Gee, good one, Hokage-sama," he chuckled. He let his last few giggles out and looked at her expectantly. "What is it really?" "That is it, Kakashi," she said. Kakashi blinked. "No, really, what is it?" he asked. "A joke is a joke, but I'm getting kind of worried here." "I told you," she said, starting to sound peeved, "Naruto is pregnant." "But that's impossible, right? I mean, even if he was having beep, which I don't think he is, he can't get pregnant. He's AO. He raised his eyebrows. "That's what I meant by unexpected effects," Tsunade said, rising from her chair and pacing around. "And it doesn't stop there." "It doesn't? While I was examining him today, I felt a strange chakra," she said. Kakashi nodded. "The demon fox," he said. Tsunade nodded as well and went back to her pacing. "You are aware that, over the past 16 years, the demon fox's chakra has been being absorbed into Naruto's own?" At Kakashi's affirmative, she continued. "It appears that the remaining chakra isn't mixing with Naruto's, instead, it is separating." Kakashi felt himself go cold as the implications of that statement hit him. "Oh shit," he said. "Oh shit, indeed." Tsunade rubbed her eyes and sat back down. "I can reseal the demon if needed, but I'm worried about the effects it could have on Naruto, especially if he's pregnant." Kakashi nodded slowly. Not only was there a chance of killing the baby, there was also a chance that the baby would be irrevocably changed by the opposing chakras swirling through its. Well, he guessed, mother was the appropriate term, but he really hated applying the term to someone he knew to be male. Irrevocably change, perhaps resulting in another overpowered demon child like Naruto himself. Or he shuddered internally at the thought Gaara of the desert. He met Tsunade's eyes and knew she was thinking the same things he was. "Well, what do we do?" he asked. Tsunade sighed. "We have two options," she said, "wait for the baby to be born, and risk the demon fox becoming too powerful for Naruto to handle, or seal it now and risk the creation of another monster. An abortion at this stage would be too risky. In my opinion, the physical and emotional effects on Naruto could be just as disastrous as a failed birth. I wanted to talk it over with you first, as you are Naruto's teacher and know him best. Can he, in your opinion, contain the demon fox, even while pregnant?" Kakashi thought it over for a minute. Despite training Naruto for 4 years, he'd only ever seen the demon fox's chakra force itself to the surface 4 or 5 times, even when Naruto himself was at his weakest. "I think we should wait," he said. "Naruto was able to hold the demon fox in, even as an infant. I'm sure that if he's informed of the risks, he'll be able to handle it." Tsunade nodded. "He has already been informed," she said. "Thank you, Kakashi, you can go now." Kakashi stood and saluted, then headed towards the door. Before he exited the office, though, Tsunade spoke. "Kakashi. Wait, I forgot something." He turned around. "The information you have received about the demon fox is confidential," she said. "You are only to discuss it in the company of other jonin, and then only if you are sure you are not being eavesdropped upon, and only after I've called a general meeting to discuss it. I don't want anyone to panic. The consequences of the actions they may take may be disastrous in this situation." Kakashi saluted again, then left, his head spinning like a madman's. He needed something to distract himself from the shocking news, and it looked like simple reading wasn't going to do it. That thought in mind, he left the Hokage's house and headed towards the nearest bar. "The monthly Junin bitch session. So I think they had a fight of some sort," Guy said, sipping at his beer. He grimaced. He'd been talking for too long, it seemed, and the beer was warm. Lee, of course, is taking Tenten's side, which complicates things. "What a gentleman," said Kurenai tiredly. Asuma nodded in agreement. "The springtime of youth, while a wonderful and vigorous thing, can occasionally have drawbacks," Guy admitted. The 3 Junin instructors were seated at a table in the far corner of one of Konoha's liveliest bars, recounting the frustrations of teacherdom in what Guy secretly called their monthly bitch session. Training students with such vibrant personalities unfortunately led to many tragedies as well as triumphs, and with no one at home, Guy naturally gravitated towards his fellow instructors for stress relief. "That it can," Asuma said. Kakashi was invited as well, of course, but never showed. Guy was glad. He would most certainly lose to Kakashi in terms of student problems. With just these two, though, his competitive nature faded, leaving him calm and somewhat tired, a far cry from his usual enthusiastic approach to life. Still, he thought it was better to let himself go completely for one night a month, rather than slowly deteriorate in front of his students. "Well," Guy said after a pause, "I'm finished, Asuma?" No real problems," Asuma said. "My team's pretty laid back. The boys do what Ino says, and nobody gets hurt." He took a drag from his ever-present cigarette and turned to Kurenai expectantly. "Where do I begin?" she said, rubbing her temples. "Hinata's been doing so much better lately. Her forms are perfect, her performance in missions superb, and she's even coming out of her shell a little bit. She told Kiba off the other day for going off on his own, and not even Shino usually does that." She paused. Not that Shino ever really talks. But today. She sighed and leaned against Asuma, who put his arm around her shoulders. Guy felt a small twinge of loneliness, but shook it off quickly. Kurenai sighed and continued. 2 weeks ago, she had a terrible day. She was totally off. Her timing, her teamwork, everything. Sure, it was only a C-rank mission, but still, it was like she was 13 again. And then, after the mission was done, she just burst out crying. She called herself worthless, apologized to me for having to deal with her. A total relapse. And today was just as bad. I don't know what to do with her. She won't talk to me, and neither will Kiba or Shino, and I know they know what's up." She sighed. "It's just so frustrating. She was doing so well." Guy winced in sympathy as he took another sip of his disgustingly warm beer. Hinata was Kurenai's pet student, as Lee was Guy's, so he knew how it was. "Don't worry too much about it, dear," Asuma said, rubbing her arm comfortingly. Guy felt another twinge and decided it was time for him to look around for a date himself. "I'm sure it's only temporary. She's probably just tired or something simple like that." "I hope so," Kurenai said. "Well," Guy said after a pause, "I think you win this week, Kurenai." Asuma nodded in agreement. "What a prize," Kurenai said. Guy drained the rest of his beer and was about to bid his fellow instructors farewell when a shadow fell across the table. He glanced up and squinted against the light. The silhouette looked vaguely familiar, and while he was attempting to place it, the figure pulled up a chair to their table and straddled it backwards. "Actually, I think I win," the figure said. At the first syllable, Guy knew exactly who it was, his eternal rival, Kakashi. "Kakashi!" he cried, jumping to his feet. "How dare you show your face here after ignoring our invitation for so long, and without even RSVPing?" "Not now, Guy, please," Kakashi said in a monotone voice. Another man would have missed it, but Guy, having observed Kakashi carefully for years, could tell that the man was depressed and a little drunk. Guy blinked, then sat down again. Even if he was being rude, even if he was his eternal rival, Guy just couldn't challenge someone whose youthful vigor was so depleted. What could have caused Kakashi such distress? "So," Asuma said. "What's up?" "You'll never believe what I just found out," Kakashi said. "Try us," Kurenai said. "My student is pregnant." The 3 jonin seated properly at the table blinked simultaneously. "I thought Sakura was smarter than that," Kurenai murmured. "Lee will be heartbroken," Guy agreed. "What happened, Kakashi? Did her youthful energy overpower her good sense? Or," he said, unable to help getting a jab in at his rival, "did yours?" Kakashi narrowed his eyes at him. "It's nothing like that." "Oh," Asuma said, taking a drag, "then what's it like?" "It's Naruto." As one, their mouths dropped open. Asuma's cigarette fell out of his. Kakashi reached over and nonchalantly ground it out in the ashtray. There was a pause. A Chunin guy didn't recognize at first walked past their table and sat down in the booth next to them, ending the moment. "You're kidding," Kurenai said. "Is that physically possible?" "Shouldn't be," Kakashi agreed, "but I just heard it from the Hokage herself. You want to call her a liar?" Kurenai shook her head. "Do you know who the father is?" Asuma asked. "Nope, not yet," Kakashi answered. "I'm gonna ask the kids tomorrow morning." "Good plan," Asuma said. Guy slowly shook his head to clear it. "Naruto, pregnant?" The boy had no small number of problems and oddities about him, but this surely took the cake. He could see why Kakashi had chosen this night to attend the bitch session. "There's more to it," Kakashi continued, "but that's classified. Something to do with the you-know-what." Guy asked, dreading the answer. Yeah, Kakashi said. Guy sighed. He'd come here looking for stress relief, not to have his stress added to. Kakashi, he said sullenly, I'm going to challenge you tomorrow, and you'd better not run away. You ruined my evening. Whatever, Kakashi said. This is all kinda hard to swallow, Asuma said. I mean, first you tell us one of your students is pregnant. Then you say it's Naruto, and now. A loud bout of coughing from the booth next to them interrupted Asuma. He glanced at the source of the noise with irritation and continued. And now, you say the village might be in danger from that thing again. You think I'm lying? Said Kakashi. I'm not saying that, said Asuma. I'm just saying? Excuse me, interrupted the Chunin from before. Now that he had a better look at his face, and wasn't in shock, Guy recognized him. Amino Iruka, one of the teachers at the academy. Did I just hear you say that Uzumaki Naruto is pregnant? You did, Kakashi said. Oh, hi, Iruka. Hi, Iruka said, rising from his seat and exiting the bar at top speed. Guy watched him go and tried to figure out what had him so upset. Oh, right. He'd practically raised Naruto himself. Guy didn't envy Naruto the scolding he was probably going to get, not at all. Well, Kakashi said, standing up, I think that's my cue to go. Night, Kakashi, Asuma said. Kurenai had fallen asleep on his shoulder. Guy raised a hand in farewell. Don't forget, Kakashi. Tomorrow. Kakashi raised his own hand noncommittally and walked towards the exit. Before he'd gone too far, though, Guy rose from his own seat and dashed to catch up with him. Kakashi, he said, Naruto, he doesn't have a lot of money to spare, does he? Nope, Kakashi said. Just enough to live. I think the Hokage's gonna increase his allowance once the kid's born, though, and give him a bunch extra so he can get his place ready. Tell her not to bother with that last bit, Guy said, smiling glintily. He knew just how to restore vigor to all of them. If I cannot convince the people of this village to provide Naruto with everything he needs to prepare for his child, not only will I run around the village 1,000 times on my hands and then do 5,000 push-ups, I will finally concede you the victory in our eternal rivalry. Kakashi. Do not back down from this challenge. Suit yourself, Kakashi said, then exited. Guy gave his retreating back a thumbs up, then rushed back to his table to tell Asuma and Kurenai all about his plan. The youthful, fiery spirit of Konoha would prevail. Enter Iruka. Pregnant. Naruto shifted onto his side and curled into a ball. He was lying under the blankets on his bed, in his room, in his apartment, and he still didn't feel secure. How could this have happened? It was bad enough being stuck as a girl, possibly for the rest of his life, and now he was pregnant. How? It wasn't fair. How was he going to care for a child? He was 16, for God's sake. And God's, he didn't even want to think about the demon fox problem. This is all Sasuke's fault, he mumbled, turning onto his other side. Damn Sasuke. Damn all of them. I hate my life. Big fat tears rolled off his face, soaking his pillow. He clutched the blankets to him and sobbed violently. Damn it, hadn't he decided years ago that he wasn't going to cry anymore? He came to slowly, the pain of what seemed like 1,000 needles calling him relentlessly back into consciousness. He blinked once, twice, and looked down at his feet. Some distance away, that boy Haku lay on the ground, seemingly unable to get up, and in front of him. Geez. All you ever do is get in the way. Standing in front of him was Sasuke. Sasuke, he said, overjoyed. They'd beaten Haku. They'd won. He started to continue, then stopped as a small lake of Sasuke's blood hit the bridge beneath them. Sasuke looked back at him, and his eyes said he was dying. What's with that face? You moron. Sasuke said, still more blood dribbling out of his mouth. Why? Naruto asked. He hated Sasuke. Sasuke hated him. And yet Sasuke had had given his life for Naruto's. He didn't understand. How should I know? Sasuke said, then made a small noise with his lips. I hated you. But, why? Why me? Naruto shouted. Sasuke was silent. I never asked for your help. I don't know. Sasuke whispered. My body just moved on its own, idiot. Then he fell, and all Naruto could do was catch him. He cradled Sasuke's body gently in his arms and listened carefully as Sasuke imparted his last words to him. "That man," Sasuke said in a weak, broken voice, struggling to keep his eyes open. "My brother. I told myself I wouldn't die until I killed him." Sasuke took a pained breath. "Don't die also." Tears started to spill from Naruto's eyes. "And then Sasuke went completely limp and died. He landed a blow on me without flinching, died to protect you." Haku said, getting to his knees in preparation to stand. To protect a precious person, knowing it was a trap, he was still able to jump in. He is a shinobi that deserves respect. He stood. "Is this your first death of a friend?" He continued. "This is the way of the shinobi." Haku slipped back into his demon mirror, and the slithering sound jolted Naruto from the trance he'd been in. "Shut up," he said. He'd hated Sasuke too. Hated him so much. And yet he was crying now, crying because Sasuke was dead. His eyes snapped open. His mind screamed, "I won't forgive you." Though whether it was Haku or Sasuke he meant the words for, even he didn't know. The demon fox's chakra swirled through him crazily. He could feel the needles embedded in his skin quiver with repressed energy. He frothed and shook, the only thought on his mind to kill the person who'd killed Sasuke, to kill him Haku. That boy, Naruto sobbed. He didn't want to be pregnant either. There was a knock at his door. Naruto pulled a pillow over his head and refused to answer it. Whoever it was could come back in the morning, when things didn't look so bleak. "Naruto." Naruto blinked. Why was Iruka here in the middle of the night? "Naruto, can I come in? I'd like to talk to you." Naruto slowly worked his way out of his bed and padded to the door, fumbling with the lock a little before opening it. Iruka stood silently in the doorway, watching as Naruto rubbed what he hoped were the last few tears from his eyes. Naruto stood to the side and Iruka walked in, placing both hands on the kitchen counter in what Naruto knew was a calming gesture for himself. Naruto shut the door. Leaning his weight onto his hands, Iruka took a deep breath. He opened his eyes and looked straight at Naruto, dead serious. The silence lingered into uncomfortability. Naruto started fidgeting, leaning against the door. Was Iruka just going to stand there all night and stare at him? "Naruto," Iruka said, finally breaking the silence, "I'll ask you right out. Are you pregnant?" Naruto went cold. How had Iruka found out? He himself had only found out that afternoon. Did he have some kind of pregnant former student detector? What would he think of Naruto now? "Naruto," Iruka repeated, "are you or are you not pregnant?" Naruto closed his eyes, prepared himself for the worst, and nodded. There was silence for a moment. Then Iruka exploded. 16 and pregnant, he yelled. Naruto winced. "Naruto, how could you? I thought I raised you better than that." Naruto buried his face in his hands, feeling the tears coming again. "If your father were alive." "If my father were alive, he wouldn't be yelling at me," Naruto sobbed. "If my father were alive, I wouldn't be an orphan. If my father were alive, I would have had a family, and friends, and I wouldn't have gotten pregnant." He slid to the ground, still sobbing. "If my father were alive, I would be happy Iruka-sensei." Naruto bent over so that his forehead was almost touching the ground, wailing and hugging himself. Why couldn't Iruka understand? Nobody understood him. Nobody. He was all alone, and pregnant, and he didn't know what to do, and he looked up in surprise as Iruka leaned down and put a hand on his shoulder. "I'm sorry, Naruto," he said, wiping away one of Naruto's tears with his thumb. "I shouldn't have gotten so angry. I was just surprised, that was all." Naruto nodded and hiccuped. "It's okay, Iruka-sensei," he said. "I understand. I am a boy. Or, I was. Oh Iruka-sensei, what am I going to do?" "It'll be okay, Naruto," Iruka said. "I'll always be here for you, always. I'd never abandon you over something like this." Naruto's eyes widened when Iruka grasped his shoulders and pulled him into a hug. He'd always been the one to hug Iruka, never the other way around. "Iruka-sensei. If it gets too tough for you living on your own, Naruto," Iruka said quietly, "there'll always be a place in my house for you." Naruto felt his eyes watering again, but this time in joy. Iruka understood. He forgave him. He still cared for him. He clung to Iruka and shook with mingled tears and laughter. Several minutes later, he was asleep. Iruka still rubbing his back soothingly, the first rest he'd gotten since his visit to Tsunade that afternoon. "Who's your daddy?" "So, I wanted to ask you guys if you had any idea who it might be," Kakashi concluded. Sasuke and Sakura were again seated in the field where they'd proven their worth as genin, while Kakashi sat on a post. This time, however, it was Kakashi who had called them there. He told Sakura and Sasuke to come a little early, as he had some questions he wanted to ask, but as usual he himself had shown up almost as late as he'd told Naruto to come. "I have no idea," Sasuke said, standing up and preparing to walk home. He didn't have time to waste on whatever trouble the idiot had gotten himself into, especially if it involved. He stuffed his fists into his pockets. "Are you sure, Sasuke-kun?" Sakura asked. Sasuke blinked. "What do you mean?" he asked. "You mean you don't have any idea who the father of Naruto's child might be?" she insisted. Kakashi raised his eyebrows and leaned forward. Sasuke groaned inwardly. There went his hopes of a quick meeting and quicker escape. "No, none," he answered. "None whatsoever." Sasuke narrowed his eyes. Why would he? He didn't keep track of Naruto, or of his liaisons. So he'd gotten himself knocked up. So what? That wasn't jealousy he was feeling, it was irritation. He didn't care who Naruto had slept with, whether he'd enjoyed it, whether he'd come back for more. He did not. "I told you, no," he said. He turned around to leave the field and this stupid discussion, only to almost run into Naruto, who was standing right behind him. "Gah!" he shouted, jumping backwards several feet. "Don't do that, moron." Someone wasn't paying attention. Naruto sing-songed, then turned to Kakashi. "Hey, Kakashi-sensei, what's up?" "Hi Naruto," said Kakashi. "Actually, we were just talking about you, Naruto." "Really?" Naruto cried happily. "About how great I am, how clever and powerful, how shining and—" "Actually," Sasuke interrupted, "we were trying to figure out who knocked you up." "Oh," Naruto said, rubbing the back of his head and looking at the ground. "Well, that's—" Sasuke rolled his eyes and turned his back on Naruto, setting his sights on the edge of the field. Wait, don't tell us," Kakashi said, stopping Sasuke's escape with a hand on his shoulder. "Let's make it a game. Sakura, tell us your theory, and Naruto, you tell us if she's right. If not, we'll keep on guessing. Sound like fun?" "I really don't think this is funny, Kakashi-sensei," Sakura said. "Okay." Naruto beamed, oblivious to his teammates' bad moods. Kakashi glanced at Sakura expectantly. "Oh, all right," Sakura sighed. She took a deep breath. "Do you remember a few weeks ago, when we had that training exercise?" Kakashi nodded. "The luncheon. Right. Well, Naruto and Sasuke-kun got into a fight, and they left together." She looked to Sasuke to confirm her story. He nodded. So he and Naruto had fought. What was her point? "Go on," Kakashi said, clearly enjoying himself. "After they'd been gone for a while, we the ones in the restaurant started hearing these thumping sounds. Rhythmic thumping sounds." She blushing. Kakashi's eyebrows raised to his hairline. "Well, the visible one did, anyway. And Sasuke-kun calling Naruto's name, and talking about, finally getting him off." She paused for breath and looked at Sasuke with something akin to grief. "So I think Sasuke-kun may be the father." Sasuke snorted in disbelief. Even if he was the father, there was no way Naruto would ever admit. "Yup, that's what happened," Naruto said. "Got it in one." Sasuke froze. His right eyebrow twitched. Then he grabbed Naruto by the wrist and pulled him to a more secluded area, away from the poles. "Why the hell did you say that, you moron?" he hissed. Naruto wrenched his wrist out of Sasuke's grasp and rubbed it ruefully. "You know as well as I do that that thumping sound was me banging your stupid head against the wall." "I know," Naruto said. "But you know what, Sasuke? You're a jerk. You're a jerk to me, and you're a jerk to Sakura-chan, and you have been for 4 years straight. If I'm going down," he smirked at Sasuke in a manner that could only be described as evil, "you're coming with me." Sasuke stared at Naruto in disbelief, blood draining from his face. Then he punched Naruto as hard as he could. Naruto flew backwards, landing near the poles. Sasuke had him pinned in a second, and was just about to pound him into the dirt when strong arms pulled him off his teammate. I don't know what he said to piss you off aside from the obvious, Sasuke, Kakashi said in a deadly voice, but you do not hit pregnant ladies. He is not a lady. Sasuke screamed, fighting against Kakashi's strong grip. He's a bastard, that's what he is. A lying, scheming, idiotic, no good, dead last, two-timing bastard. Sakura helped Naruto into a sitting position, glaring at him all the while. I hate you, Naruto. You beeping bastard, I hate you. Sakura, get him out of here, all right? Kakashi said. Sakura nodded and helped Naruto get up. Naruto was rubbing his cheek and gazing at Sasuke like he'd just been betrayed by the thing he loved most in the world. Sasuke felt his rage dwindle into impotence at the sight. He looked away. So what if he'd caused that expression? Naruto had betrayed him first. Once Sakura and Naruto were safely out of the field, Sasuke felt the arms around him loosen. He broke free the instant he could and escaped into the forest. Kakashi called for him to come back, but he ignored it, instead running until emotional pain and shock caused his legs to give out deep within the forest. He curled into a ball there on the ground and hugged himself, pressing his knees against his eyelids. Why? Why was this happening to him? Wasn't his brother killing his entire family enough? What god out there had decided to pick on him? How could Naruto have done that? To him? He'd trusted him with his life, and his heart. He couldn't deny it any longer. He cared for Naruto as more than a rival, more than a teammate, and had for a long, long time. And that just made it hurt all the more. He shook with silent sobs, feeling tears spill from his eyes and not willing them away for once. He was 16, and in love, and life beeped. After what seemed like a long, long time, he stopped and sat up, wiping at his eyes. It wasn't that he wanted to stop, it was that he'd run out of tears to cry. His throat hurt, he felt sick, and he realized, as he looked at his surroundings for the first time, that he'd fallen down right in front of the tree he'd mutilated months ago. He punched the tree for old time's sake and leaned his back against it, gazing up at the dispassionate sky. Then he drew his knees up and let his head fall forward onto them. Why couldn't he have just one break in his life? Just one day of clear skies and unbroken sunshine? The wind suddenly picked up. Sasuke blinked as he sensed that, however impossible it seemed, the sky had somehow heard his plea. He raised his head and looked up through the forest canopy, hope swelling in his heart, waiting for the ray of light he was sure would come. And then, it rained. OMG baby shower, Part A boy in his belly. The first thing Naruto heard one morning a month or so later was a knock on his door. He blinked and yawned and glanced at his alarm clock. He frowned. Who the hell came knocking on people's doors at 6:30 in the morning? He shook his head to clear it and slowly maneuvered himself to his hands and knees, careful of his bulging belly. Oh, right. All ninjas were awake at 6:30. He himself had been given maternity leave, but the others would hardly be on his schedule. The knock came again. Naruto braced himself, then shoved himself to his knees. He pulled one foot out from under him and placed it flat on the ground. With a mighty heave, he got to his feet and wobbled there for a minute, regaining his balance. His back hurt. The knock came again. I'm coming, he snarled at the door, pulling on his bathrobe and rubbing at his eyes. Geez, give a pregnant woman a break. He thought for a moment. Pregnant man, I mean. He thought for a moment more, then decided to put the question of which was worse to call himself away for later. Rubbing his belly to soothe it, the little bugger got violent when it was disturbed. He padded to his front door and opened it to face Kiba and Shino, who were standing on the other side. Good morning, he said, confused. Why were they here? Had they come to make fun of him? Well, if they did, he was still Uzumaki Naruto, Leaf Village's #1 ninja, and he would kick their asses even while pregnant. Hey, Naruto, Kiba said. Kuromaru yipped in polite greeting. Shino nodded. Naruto stepped back and opened the door a little further. Would you like to come in? He said. It seemed like a polite thing to do, and on second thought fighting while pregnant didn't seem at all appealing, especially against guys as powerful as he knew Kiba and Shino to be. Actually, we were just on our way out to meet Hinata and Kurenai for a mission, Kiba explained, fiddling with something in one of his pockets. But we thought we'd stop by and drop some things off. Naruto narrowed his eyes in confusion. Drop things off. What did they mean? So, here, Kiba said, drawing something out of his pocket. It was a bright purple ball. Kiba squeezed it. It emitted a quacking sound similar to a duck's. Naruto took it, still confused. Why was Kiba giving him a dog toy? It's for the baby, Kiba explained, looking pleased with himself. Kuromaru yipped, and Kiba scratched her ears. Don't worry, Kuromaru, I didn't forget. He reached into another pocket and brought out a hot water bottle, which he also handed to Naruto. Here, this is from Kuromaru. And I think some other people are planning on bringing more stuff later today, so don't go out, okay? Ah, thanks, Naruto said, still somewhat perplexed. For years, these people had despised him, and now they were giving him gifts? He knew they'd grown more accepting of him through their years of fighting and training together, but he'd never suspected. He felt tears come to his eyes. They cared. They really, really cared. Even if it was a dog toy. Well, we gotta get going, Kiba said, so see you later, Naruto. He bounded off down the hallway to the stairwell, leaving Naruto and Shino in the dust. Shino raised an eyebrow in what Naruto interpreted as amusement, reached into his own pocket, and drew something out. It was a stuffed ladybug with googly eyes that tinkled musically when shaken. Naruto hugged it to himself along with his other two gifts. Thank you. He yelled to Shino, who was walking sedately down the hall. Shino raised a hand in acknowledgement, then turned the corner into the stairwell. Naruto leaned against the doorframe, happier than he'd been in a long time. Thank you, he murmured to himself. Part B. Hinata's true feelings, revealed. Later that day, as Naruto was having his mid-morning ramen, he heard a shy knock on his door. He hurried to answer it, and as he'd guessed it was Hinata. Hi, Hinata, he said cheerfully, blinking when she immediately thrust a package at him. He took it and unwrapped it. Inside were 3 or 4 infant-sized jumpsuits in varying shades of orange, with matching cloth diapers. Naruto-kun, I knitted those myself. I hope you like them, she said, twiddling her fingers. Naruto grinned. I love them, he said. Thanks, and thanks again, 'cause you're just about the only person in the village who still calls me kun. Hinata blushed and looked away. On impulse, Naruto drew her into a hug, an action made difficult by his bulging belly. After a minute, he let her go. She looked at him for a second, face flushed. Then she cupped his face with her hands and beeped him. It was a chaste beep, lasting only a second before Hinata released him and fled down the hall. Naruto watched her rush down the stairs, then re-entered his apartment and shut the door. His head was spinning as he set Hinata's gift down on the kitchen table with Kiba's and Shino's. Hinata. Liked girls? Part C. The Gardener and the Grump. The next knock came as Naruto was boiling water for yet more ramen. Scowling, he turned off the burner and padded to the door, where he was greeted by an enthusiastic Ino followed by what appeared to be a giant floating bouquet. Hi Naruto. She chirped. Hi Ino, he answered, perplexed. Ah, what? Mind if I come in? She asked. When Naruto moved automatically to the side she waltzed in, inspecting each area of the apartment carefully. Let's see. She murmured. I'll put those there, and those here, and maybe use a little of that for right here. Ah, Ino. Naruto said, but was ignored. The bouquet continued to float, though on closer inspection it appeared to have legs. Okay, it's all settled, then, Ino said, clapping her hands together. Hey you, bring them over here. The bouquet floated in Ino's general direction, cursing as it bumped into the table. Once it had passed him and he'd gotten over his shock, Naruto was surprised to see a telltale shaggy ponytail hidden beneath the foliage. Shikamaru, is that you? He asked. Yeah, Shikamaru answered, his voice muffled but still audible. Naruto watched Ino curiously as she took various brightly colored flowers off of the giant pile in Shikamaru's arms and positioned them in what seemed like completely random places. Be sure to move these ones before you cook anything, Ino said, humming to herself as she scattered some red ones on the stove. Ah, Naruto tried again, what exactly are you doing? This is a tradition in my family, Ino said, removing a large bunch of blue flowers and holding them against the window to test their placement. A woman should be surrounded with beautiful flowers when she's pregnant, and the baby will grow up to be beautiful too. Okay, Naruto said. But how does that work? It's a tradition, Ino explained. It doesn't have to make sense to work, it just does. And besides, aren't I living proof that it does work? Ino tossed her admittedly gorgeous hair to drive the point home, then continued her task. Shikamaru sighed. You think you could get rid of these weeds in front of my face anytime soon? He said. They're tickling my nose. They're not weeds, Shikamaru. They're daffodils, Ino said, and if you sneeze on them, you know what'll happen. Or what won't happen. But the only reason I came here in the first place was because you were gonna. Your choice. The bouquet dipped slightly as Shikamaru gave in. God, I hate women. Love you too, Shikamaru. Part D. Love is like beef, it's ultimately bad for you, but nice while it lasts. A while later, as Naruto was just settling down for his after-lunch nap, he heard another knock on his door. Careful not to disturb the flowers that littered every surface in his apartment, he padded to the front door. On the other side was Choji, smiling over a large cloth bag. Behind him was another bag, this one even larger. As had the bouquet before it, it appeared to be floating. Used to the routine by now, Naruto stepped aside and let Choji in. He put his bag down on the table. Hey, bring it over here, he called. The giant floating bag of whatever it was made its way over to the table, cursing as it bumped into it. Shikamaru, is that you again? Naruto asked. Yup, Shikamaru grumbled as he set his burden down. Choji untied the knot holding his bag closed and started taking various cans and bottles from it. Naruto picked one up and stared at it, puzzled. Natal nin? He asked. This is all health food for your pregnancy, Choji said. It's important to maintain proper nutrition when you're pregnant, you know, or else your kid'll grow up to be weak and puny. Choji removed the last of the items from his own bag and began ferrying the items into the cupboards. Shikamaru watched disinterestedly, drawing an irritated glance from Choji. Hey, Shikamaru, you gonna just sit there all day? Help me out with this? Fine, Shikamaru said, starting to slowly unpack his own burden. This is such a pain. I'm only here 'cause I'm your friend, anyway. Naruto felt his high spirits sink slightly at the declaration. Stop whining, Choji said. You're not the one who's pregnant. Thank God for small favors, Shikamaru agreed, about halfway finished with his unpacking. And anyway, you're only in such a bad mood because Ino didn't. Shut up. Part E. Team Happy appears. Naruto had only been napping for 30 minutes when he was woken by yet another knock on his door. Grumbling, he made his way to the door. As much as he appreciated the gifts and the thoughts, these people had the worst timing he'd ever seen. His mood wasn't improved when he opened the door and found Hyuga Neji scowling at him. Sure, the guy had gotten a lot better over the years, but he was still a jerk occasionally, and today looked to be one of those days. Yes, Naruto said. Hello, Neji answered. He looked over to the stairway and blinked. You didn't have to carry it all, idiot. No, came a voice from the hall. I told you, Neji, I've got it. At least let me take the bedding, Lee, came another voice, this one female. It's falling off the top. Naruto peered into the hall. 1010 was walking down the hall, carrying a large number of blankets and pillows, and what appeared to be a small mattress. Beside her was a giant floating pile of yellow painted boards. Naruto guessed the legs sticking out from the bottom belonged to Rock Lee. You gonna let us in or what? Neji asked, trying to sound civil and failing. Naruto let him in, then went to help Lee. Or, rather, he tried to. Neji stopped him with a hand on his shoulder before he could get out the door. Don't even ask, he said. He won't let you. Believe me, I tried. Naruto looked at him in surprise and realized that the hand on his shoulder was thickly bound with bandages. What happened to your hand? Naruto asked. Tree fell on me, Neji said. He gestured to the inside of Naruto's apartment with his free hand. So, where do you want this stuff? Naruto was tempted to ask what use he could possibly have for a bunch of wood, but decided he didn't really want to pick a fight, what with himself pregnant and Neji in a bad mood. He looked around his apartment, trying to find room in the clutter for Lee to put the boards down. Finding very little, and with Lee drawing closer, he resorted to shoving the table and its accompanying flowers into a corner. And none too soon. As soon as he'd done so, Lee struggled through the door, followed closely by 1010, who was trying to keep the boards balanced in addition to dealing with her own load. Lee, damn it, Lee, Neji said irritably. Watch where you're going, you almost hit the door frame. I can't see, Lee admitted. That's why you should have let us take some, Tenten said. Really, Lee? Working together, Naruto, Neji and Tenten managed to guide Lee to the corner Naruto had cleared out earlier, only squishing a bouquet or two of Ino's carefully placed flowers. Once all the boards and bedding were safely on the floor, Lee stood up, wiping at his brow. "Hi, Naruto," he said cheerfully, if a bit out of breath. "We heard about your, problem, from Guy-sensei." He gestured to the boards. "So we decided to make you a cradle." Naruto was stunned. They'd gone to all that trouble, all that expense, just for him? Where did you get the wood?" he asked. "We chopped it ourselves," Neji answered. "You guys," Naruto said, feeling himself tearing up again. He forced the tears away. He wasn't going to cry, not now. But then Tenten patted him on the shoulder and they came right back. "Don't worry about it," she said, smiling reassuringly. "We learned stuff from this too. Like," she shot a teasing glance at Neji, "how you shouldn't try to chop down trees with your chakra alone." "How was I supposed to know it was weak on my side?" Neji grumbled. Lee grinned at his longtime rival's irritation. "You do have the tools with you, though, don't you?" he asked. "Though I can understand if you left them behind, what with your poor injured hand and all." Neji raised an eyebrow at Lee. "You've gotten sassy in your old age," he said. "And the tools are right here." He gestured to a bag at his side. "You've just gotten old," Lee said, then struck a pose. "Come, let us apply our youthful vigor to this project, so that we may help our friend, who has fallen victim to his own ultramodern attitude." "Lee," Tenten said, separating the boards into piles by size and shape, "you scare me sometimes. Do you realize how much like Guy-sensei you sound?" "That's a bad thing?" Lee asked, puzzled. "Let's just get this over with," Neji said, removing the bag from his shoulder. He glanced at Naruto. "It should only take us an hour or so. You should rest. Though I'm not sure you'll be able to, what with all this racket." He inclined his head towards his cohorts, who were arguing quietly. "I still think we should have painted them pink," Tenten said, frowning slightly. "But what if it turns out to be a boy?" Lee retorted. "No man, no matter how small, wants to be housed in a pink room." "Pink is a manly color," Tenten said. "And anyway, what about Sakura? You like pink when it's on her." Her smile took on a teasing edge. Lee blushed. "Sakura-san's different, and I still think they should have been green." Naruto sighed and nodded. "I'll try," he said. Neji nodded in return, then bent down next to his teammates. "You know, this is a stupid argument," he said. "We've already painted them." "True," Tenten said thoughtfully. Naruto left the room, entered his bedroom and sunk down onto the futon. He squirmed around, trying to get himself comfortable. But green is the color of youth and vitality. What better color could there be for a baby? Lee's exclamation was soon followed by the loud, rhythmic pounding of 3 hammers working simultaneously. Naruto groaned and pulled his pillow over his face. Why them? Why him? And most of all, why pregnancy? Part F. "You're my friend too." The pounding, grating and occasional cursing sounds from his front room kept Naruto from sleeping, which was just as well when he heard yet another knock on his door over the loud noises. "Yes," he said as he opened the door, prepared to kill whoever was on the other side. Why couldn't they just let him get some sleep? That was all he wanted. That was all. "Hey, Naruto," Shikamaru said, his hands behind his back. Naruto took a deep breath and forced himself to calm down. When that didn't work, he took another. He started to count backwards from 10, but stopped when Shikamaru spoke again. "I know you've probably been trying to get to sleep all day," he said, "so I'll make this quick." With that, he took his hands out from behind his back. Naruto stared at the item he held, dazzled. It was a beautiful mobile made out of multicolored fragments of glass. When it shook or spun, it caught the light wonderfully, spraying a colorful pattern onto the wall. "It's not actually glass," Shikamaru continued. "Just some pieces from old plastic bottles I found. You can hang it above the cradle. The edges aren't sharp, so even if it does fall, the baby should be all right." Naruto stared at him. "Shikamaru?" he asked. Shikamaru blinked. "Yeah? Why'd you do something like that? All day you've been saying, 'Oh, I'm only here because Ino said so.' Or, 'I'm only here 'cause Choji's my friend.' So, why?" Shikamaru looked away, trying to look nonchalant and not quite succeeding. "Well," he said. "You're my friend too, right?" Naruto put his hands to his mouth. He bit his lip. Then he gave into his impulse and grabbed Shikamaru around the waist, hugging him tightly. "Hey, hey," Shikamaru protested, holding the mobile out of harm's way, but Naruto ignored him. Shikamaru was his friend. He couldn't be irritated anymore. It wasn't their fault they always showed up just as he was about to do something. He could forgive anyone anything, if they were his friend. He snuggled closer to Shikamaru and heard him sigh. "Ino's gonna kill me for this," he muttered, then slid his free arm around Naruto and hugged him back. Part G. Well, what else would Kakashi give him? Guy's team left soon enough, the cradle fully assembled. They had even attached the mobile and scattered a few flowers on the bedding. Naruto gazed at it with a tired smile, sitting on his couch. The afternoon sun shone golden through his window, and he had yet to get any real sleep. "Oh, well," he thought, "might as well wait until evening." "But in the meantime," he said, "it's ramen time." He groaned as he attempted to push himself into a standing position. After a few tries, his legs gave out and he gave up. He rubbed his abdomen ruefully. What was it about this baby? It had only been a month since he'd found out about his pregnancy, but it felt like the baby had grown enough for 3. The thing must have gained 5 pounds just that day. Naruto's hand stilled as a horrible thought crossed his mind. Suppose he was having twins? Or even triplets? "Yo," said Kakashi, his smiling face only inches from Naruto's. Naruto stared at him for a second, then he screamed. "What's wrong?" Kakashi asked, pretending to be hurt. "I kept the mask on, see." "Kakashi-sensei, don't do that," Naruto panted, still trying to get over the near heart attack he'd had at his teacher's sudden appearance. "Hey, sneaking in is easier and quicker than knocking." Kakashi eyed Naruto's semi-helpless state. "And I doubt you'd want to get up again." Naruto sighed. "Kakashi-sensei, can you?" he asked, extending a hand. "Sure," said Kakashi, and was just about to pull Naruto to his feet when there was a loud pounding at the door. "Kakashi. I know you're in there," Kakashi sighed. "Hang on a moment, Naruto," he said, then made his way to the door and opened it. Guy bounded in, all energy and sparkles. "So," he asked, "did it work?" Naruto eyed him confusedly. "Did what work?" "My plan," Guy said, making a quick round of the apartment. Naruto turned to Kakashi. "Kakashi-sensei, what's he talking about?" "Oh, that," Kakashi answered. "This whole thing was his idea." "You mean, the gifts?" "Yup." Guy said, scrutinizing one of Naruto's cupboards. "Natal nin, that's good." He shut the cupboard and crossed the room to the cradle. "I see they went with my suggestion for the color." He shook it gently. "And it's well put together." He turned to Kakashi and smiled glintingly. "Looks like I win, Kakashi. That makes it 72-71. And Naruto, congratulations on your impending, motherhood." With that, he gave Naruto a thumbs up and left. Kakashi rolled his eyes. "Sure, whatever," he said, digging around in his waist pouch. "Oh, here it is. Congratulations on the new arrival." He handed Naruto a small, rectangular package wrapped in plain brown paper. Naruto tore the wrapping open, then stared at the item inside. "Kakashi-sensei," he said. "Yes?" Kakashi asked, his single visible eye shining happily. "What kind of pervert do you think I am?" Naruto said, clenching his hand into a fist. If only he could get up, he'd kick Kakashi's ass. "What?" Kakashi's face fell. "You don't like it?" "Of course I don't like it," Naruto yelled. "What kind of sicko gives their student a book called, Come Pregnancy? What's wrong with it?" he asked. "Pregnant people get horny too, you know. I just thought you might want some instruction on how to do it without exhausting yourself too much, especially if you and Sasuke finally get over your little argument." "Instruction? Instruction? Why would I want to have beep now? And even if I did, no way in hell would I do it with that jerk saw." Naruto was interrupted by a curt knock at his door. He exhaled an exasperated breath and looked at Kakashi helplessly. Kakashi sighed. "Want me to get it for you?" he said. Naruto nodded. Kakashi made his way to the door and opened it, his broad frame blocking Naruto's view of whoever was at the door. Naruto narrowed his eyes as he saw Kakashi's back tense in shock. Was it an enemy? Someone planning to get him while he was pregnant and helpless? He relaxed somewhat as he saw Kakashi do so, but remained alert. Kakashi had a quick, quiet conversation with whoever was at the door, then turned to Naruto and smiled. "Well, Naruto," he said, "I'm off. See you around." He slipped past the person at the door. The baby in Naruto's belly suddenly kicked at him, painfully so. He doubled over, clutching his stomach. The door shut, but didn't look up. If Kakashi had left him alone with this person, it had to be someone safe. He rubbed his belly, trying to calm the baby down. Whoever it was walked over to him, stopped, then sat down on the coffee table in front of him. "Hey, idiot, you okay?" Naruto froze. Only one person ever called him idiot anymore, and that voice. He slowly looked up and found himself staring into the eyes of the person he'd been avoiding for a month. Uchiha Sasuke had come to visit. To be continued, and thank you for watching.